Hello, good morning everyone, and welcome. My name is Vincenzo De Bellis. I'm Director of Fairs and Exhibition Platforms here at Art Basel. And it gives me great pleasure of being the one kicking off this great program of Art Basel Miami Beach Conversations. As you all know, or most of you know, the conversations are a very important part of what Art Basel in general and Art Basel Miami Beach also do, which is to reflect and think about some of the most important topics of the art world today, and also thinking what can be the art world of the future. This year, after a few years of not easy fairs, we are back at full house, and even our programs are full house. And we're going to hear a lot of great panels, 9 in total, with 35 leading figures between artists, thinkers, curators, museum directors, and so on and so forth. So they're going to talk about concepts like hybridity, collaborations, community building. You will have a lot of interesting things to hear, and I cannot wait to do that. The program has been, you will see also a very important note, all the talks will be live streamed and will also be recorded, and they will be available online after the show. So this year, there's some kind of the 9 panels, there's a few that are very important to us. All of them are, but few highlights I want to mention. And starting with the celebration of the work and collaboration of Ming Smith, the sonic lecture of Chino Mobi and the crypto entrepreneur Moon Jarin, and also the celebration of the 20 years collaborations of Art Basel Miami Beach and a number of collectors of the local scene, such as the Craig Robbins collections, Margolis, and De La Cruz. It's going to be the panel following this. And the program has been curated by a dear friend and a colleague, Emily Butler. Thank you so much, Emily. Please raise your hand. And I want to thank Emily not only for the care she puts into every single of these panels, but for the care that she puts in everything she does. So thank you very much. Of course, among other, with Emily, there's a few other collaborators of our programs. One of them is on stage, Hans Ulrich Obrist and the Serpentine Gallery. And Hans Ulrich is the artistic director of the Serpentine Galleries in London. And also a few more friends who I want to mention, Andros Zanto and the ICA Miami and Tim Schneider. And I want to thank them for their support and also all the other panelists that will be with us in the next few days. Now, without further ado, I want to welcome these 3 great individuals that we have on stage. Hans Ulrich, we just introduced him. Carrie Mae Weems, artist. Thank you, Carrie, to be here. And also Nona Hendryx, thank you very much. Great artist, vocalist, composer. They're going to talk about their collaboration, their intersections, and what's in their mind for the present and the future. So I want to thank you all. Thank you all for being here with us today. Enjoy this conversation, the following ones, and enjoy the show downstairs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vincenzo. And before making the introduction, I wanted to ask you all to give a very, very warm welcome to Nona Hendryx and Carrie Mae Weems. I want to thank Art Basel Miami, Noah Horowitz, Mark Spiegler, Vincenzo De Bellis, Emily Butler, Jenny also, and the entire dream team here. We should give them a big round of applause. And as you know, these panels have always to do with collaborations, with artists inspiring each other. We reach out to an artist and ask them about what are the practices which inspire them. And in a way, actually, Alexis Pauling-Gams said that maybe that's too linear in terms of genealogy, that maybe we actually should rather think also, as she writes in the book Dab on Sylvia Winter, about not necessarily inspiring each other, but actually working with each other. That sort of idea of collaboration. And of course, Carrie has pioneered so many works of collaboration. Carrie once said that all artists are influenced by other artists, and I'm no different. I try to spend time with other artists, with their work, with their books. It might be Aretha Franklin borrowing from Frank Sinatra, or Frank Sinatra borrowing from Nina Simone. I'm interested in the way we impact one another and we influence one another. That was in a conversation Carrie did with Yaniva Lee. So we had a phone call a couple of months ago, and I asked Carrie actually what would be a conversation, you know, and Carrie immediately answered that Nona Hendryx, and it's a dream come true that Nona accepted the invitation as well, that you both accepted the invitation. You have, of course, both collaborated. Carrie needs no introduction, nor does Nona. Their legendary work is known to all of you. Carrie has created complex bodies of art that investigates family relationships, gender roles, racism, and the consequences of power across a multitude of disciplines, including image, text, film, and performance. Carrie addresses a wide array of issues, but her overarching commitment is to help us better understand our present moment by examining our collective past, or to actually think of Panofsky, the future, being invented with fragments from the past. Carrie is currently artist in residence at Syracuse University. Nona Hendryx, revolutionary art rock new wave goddess, is a vocalist, a songwriter, musician, and multimedia artist, often in the work tackling social issues, love, and politics. The trajectory spans decades of sound and style evolutions. And we're gonna, as actually both Carrie and Nona suggested today, talk about the future, about sort of projects which are about to be realized. We're gonna talk also about futurism. That was both of your wish. Carrie suggested actually that we would begin with a film. Carrie will introduce, so we're gonna watch these films. So it's a panel in different parts. Then we will have a conversation, and we then segue into the Dream Machine project, which is actually a future collaboration between the two of you. And before we now see the film, I think, Carrie, you wanted to say a few words. Yes. Thank you so much. Great. A very warm welcome to Carrie Mae Weems.
Oprah. I wonder, is it possible actually to bring the house lights down just a bit here on stage? I think it would also help to be able to see things just a little bit better. I don't know if it's possible, but if you can, that would be really wonderful. Thank you all for the invitation. I'm always so happy to be with Hans because of what he does and how he does it in this sort of crazy, mercurial, dynamic way. We've known each other now for almost 30 years, I think, which is sort of amazing. I just keep thinking I'm getting older and older and older. And then, of course, to be here with my darling, darling Nona Hendryx. I want to just talk just a few minutes. We are going to, I'm going to show a video in a few minutes, some photographs and videos, and then we're going to have a conversation between the three of us, and then we're going to end today really focused a little bit more on futurism, ideas about futurism, Afrofuturism, and the kinds of projects that Nona is really invested in at the moment, and how we might collaborate. But as artists, people that are out there that are artists, and I think that we have a number of artists in the room, yeah? We have a number of artists in the room and people that are deeply interested in the arts. It occurred to me, I start almost every single day listening to the same music, and I've been listening to the same music for a really long time, like for years, not, like the same music in the same order. And it seriously impacts the way that I deal with the day, and the way that I deal with my life, and the way that I deal with my work. It is integral. It's not a sonic environment for the sake of noise in the background, but it is really the sound that infuses my life, that really helps me to shape what I believe might be possible. And so I've thought a lot about music. I've thought a lot about musicians, and I've worked with a number of musicians over the years, like many, 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 many musicians. And it occurred to me, actually, that I started working with musicians when I was probably about 16 or 17, like working closely with them. I had worked a bit as a dancer, and so live musicians were always with us, drummers were always with us. But I started thinking about how I wanted to hear and see and experience music. And so, since I have very particular ways of how I want to experience it, I think can be useful not only for myself in my life, but also for my friends and my colleagues, I started designing and producing the kinds of concerts with the kinds of artists that I wanted to see in collaboration with one another, in response to one another. And the first one that I did was with the World Saxophone Quartet and the Persuasions. And I thought it was actually going to be with the World Saxophone Quartet and Sweet Honey in the Rock. But one of the wonderful things that happened was that Bernice Regan-Johnson actually wrote me probably one of the most amazing letters that I've ever received from any other artist that I still actually have, where she sort of critiques my idea of what I was proposing, right? To sort of bring this idea of sort of a cappella voice together along with these amazing saxophonists. So I had come up with this idea when I was like, fairly young, and I had absolutely no money, and I couldn't figure out how I was going to get this money, and the only person that I knew that had any money was the local Coke dealer. So I called him up, and I said, listen, I need to borrow $20,000 to do a concert in San Francisco with the World Saxophone Quartet and the Persuasions. And he said, you need what? And what am I going to get? And I said, well, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to make any money, but you're not going to lose any money. He said, Carrie, you're really crazy. And so that was the end of that. But I did actually wind up doing the concert anyway, and it was my first concert. And so, so these ideas of bringing concerts together, I've done concerts with Jerry Allen and Jason Moran, because I'm bringing them together for the first time, these major pianists who really respected one another, but hadn't been given sort of the right context and to work with one another. And so sort of designing these projects has been really sort of integral to my work, and I think of it as being my work. It is as important as the visual work that I do. And I just want to say just a few things, and you can start the slides whenever you want. I just wanted to say that collaboration and appropriation are things that are deeply linked. And sometimes appropriation can be an act of stealing, as can collaboration. It can be an exploration. Sometimes it can be a comparison and a contrast. Sometimes collaboration and or appropriation can be an act of negotiation. Sometimes it's a marriage of singular ideas coming together to form yet new ideas. Sometimes it's actually an attack on the form itself, the very act of collaboration, the very act of appropriation. Sometimes it's simply a hand that's well played. Sometimes it's all about influence, and sometimes it's all about theft. Sometimes it's about critical intervention and the ways in which you might critically intervene together. Sometimes it's around notions of disruption. Sometimes it's around questions of ownership. Sometimes it's around questions of wearing the line. Nona and I have worked together now in, I think, very important ways, and I think of our collaboration, our unique collaboration, as a way of extending our mutual vocabularies and our language. And I would like you to raise the sound on the music, please, right? It extends vocabulary, and therefore it extends reach. The first time I worked with Nona was around a project that I pulled together called Grace Notes. Grace Notes is all about the way in which the assault on the Black body had materialized within not only the Western imagination, but in the real world. We performed Grace Notes at the Kennedy Center in Los Angeles, at Yale, and of course,
they were no strangers to sorrow.
At the Kennedy Center was the first major one.
Time and time again.
And this is one of the pieces that came out of that.
The woman
this
was
piece
denied.
of a man who's running.
A man was killed.
Raise the
body
volume,
lay
please. I
in
can't
the
hear.
open,
Thank you.
uncovered and exposed. Women wailed and men moaned. For reasons unknown, I saw him running. I saw him stop. I saw him turn with raised hands. I heard a shot. I saw him fall.
I did this, then I called Nona and I asked Nona if she would consider making a piece around grace as I was struggling to understand the meaning of grace. And the volume up.
In what you can see,
Performed at Watermill Center 2021.
when life pierces your heart and you're on your knees, have faith and believe. Breathe and move on
What a voice.
through the night, through the storm, holding on by a thread. Look inside you instead. Have faith and believe. We're singing grace, 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 grace will save your soul. First you have to believe in grace, grace, oh grace, grace, says that grace will save your soul.
So Nona presents this music. The first iterations we had to talk about. And then Nona asked me to work with her around a project that she was developing called Refrigerated Dreams. And I, based on the Kitchen Table series, as her influence, we used that work in order to launch another project. Just a bit of that with Francesca Harper.
Come by ye. Come by ye. Come by ye. Come by ye.
Lyrics by Lynn Nottage.
Come by ye, 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 come by ye.
Images from the Kennedy Center.
Come by ye. Come by ye, come by ye,
We started
come
to
by
focus on Nona's
ye,
vocalism.
The murder is stuck. The night is dark. I can't see you, but I can feel you. I can feel you next to me. Water, water. Water, water. Water, water. Pulling us down. Water, water. Water, water. Water, water. Pulling us down.
Watermill Center, Robert Wilson.
The river is deep, the shore is strong. I can't see you, but I can feel you. I can feel you next to me. Water, water, strong. Water, water, angry. Water, water, pulling us down. Water, water, cold. Water, water, angry. Water, water, pulling us down. Water, water, cold. Water, water, angry. Water, water, pulling us down.
We'll be talking more about this project, Dream Machine, in just a few minutes. Just a few ideas and images that come first. For collaborators.
Pulling us down. Pulling us down. Pulling us down. Pulling us down. Pulling us down.
Thank you.
Carrie, thank you so, so much. And I thought we could maybe begin with a question how it all began. How did you meet each other?
We met through, hello, good morning. Yes. Carrie Mae Weems bringing us together this morning. I met Carrie through Carl Hancock Rux, another amazing artist. If you ever hear Carl speak, you'll never forget it. He has an incredible bass voice. And Carl introduced me to Carrie because I told him how much I loved Carrie's work and that the impression that the Kitchen Table series had on me. And it stayed with me. And there was an artist who was a choreographer for Alvin Ailey who created another piece, and it was around the kitchen table, two couples on a stage divided by a wall, and they danced and they moved between, and they reminded me of the series Kitchen Table, and I always wanted to bring them together, this particular dance and Carrie's images, and I had the opportunity to do it, and I asked Carrie, and she said yes, and we turned a place that you would not imagine it being into an amazing space.
We did it at Joe's Pub.
Yes.
We did it at Joe's Pub. But I have to say, so I had, of course, I do look at a lot of stuff, right? And so I first, of course, I've known about Nona forever, right? You know, from her work with Patti LaBelle. And
been around a long time.
Right? You know, like just this amazing voice. And then a friend of ours, a mutual friend, passed away, Sekou Sindiata. And the program was broadcast somehow. I saw a video of it or something. And I remember this badass sister standing in the middle of the floor just holding it. I thought, who the fuck is that? Right? And I think I asked Carl, and he said, "Oh, that's Nona Hendryx." And I said, "Oh, like that's who I want to work with. That is who I want to work with, right?" But I didn't know how to approach her. And Carl said that he would introduce us, and somehow it didn't quite happen. But then finally, when I found out that you were interested in the Kitchen Table series, and he said, "Well, Carrie, Nona would like to call you. Talk to you about the Kitchen Table series." I was stunned. I couldn't believe that my dream had actually come true. And I really do mean that, because I think that there are a lot of fabulous artists that are out there, but you can't work with everybody. You really can't work with everybody. You can work with a few people, and most artists are a pain in the ass. Right? So when you find somebody that not only are you in sort of like simpatico with, but you actually can really work together, and you can work through the difficult passages of the work together, then you hold on.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the work that we do and have is in conversation, like kind of we're having here now. But Carrie and I will speak on the phone, or especially when we're doing Refrigerated Dreams, we have a lot of time to just talk about our lives, and talk about family, and talk about society, and talk about things that were going on, and how we feel about being a woman, and how you are as a woman in the world, and we just talk about everything. And that's not always the way that artists speak with each other. A lot of times you just get together to work and create, but you don't really talk about things like, dyeing your hair, or do you want to dye your hair, or do you don't want to dye your hair, or just, things like that. They're mundane, but then you get into deeper conversations that we've talked about George Floyd, and how incredibly a person who was not on a path to change the world changed the world. Yes. It's just, that, and these are the conversations that we have, and out of it is born the work that we do.
Right. And I think, the work is so deeply informed by that. I mean, it's sort of like, it's like listening to the music that we just heard now, Water, Water.
Yeah.
Right? The link between that music and your notions, for instance, of Afrofuturism are deeply, deeply linked. Yeah. And so there are all of these ways in which, the conversation is about the work, and the conversation also allows us, I think, to extend the work in really unique ways, in multiple ways. I like to say it helps us to speak in multiple languages and multiple tongues, right? Because you're really talking through, the truth as you understand it. The truth as you understand it, this truth about, what did George Floyd mean to the world? What was that truth, right? How is it not only, in the United States, hundreds of other black men have died before George Floyd, particularly during the period of time that Obama was actually in office. Indeed, there was an escalation of violence directed against black men, specifically because Barack Obama was in office, right? It is fascinating that the numbers began to go down when he left office. But George Floyd was the straw that broke the camel's back. And in that was unleashed sort of micro explosions, explosions all around the world, explosions throughout culture, throughout institutions, throughout our societies, black, white, and everything in between, that I find really fascinating. And everybody is aware in a way that they were not aware before, because we were in this pandemic and we were all at home watching TV, and something happened that we weren't expecting, right? And it called on us, I think, in a very unique way. Now, how do then we sort of bring that work forward, right? Right? I started talking about it in Grace Notes with the killing of Emmanuel 9, right? Now we're sort of thinking about, well, what does this mean for us as we move forward? What is this sort of corrective path that we're on? How does it take shape? And then how does it get infused into a certain kind of futurism that allows us to begin unpacking not only what the problems have been, but what are the correctives that then we might be able to sort of flow through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I was actually
That's
thinking...
how we met.
And I was thinking...
Yes.
Such great answers. And when I was listening to you, Carrie, I was actually just thinking, it brings us right back to Grace Notes, what you were describing. And you said once that actually Grace Notes began with a deep desire to get at what was troubling you. It examines the wider social implications of tension at work in communities across America. So can you talk a little bit more how you collaborate on such a project?
Can you
Just
give
how
me like your notes? Yes, I said that. When did I say that?
In the notes to the program.
It's
in the notes to the program.
I should start reading them more. Really, I'm brilliant. I didn't know.
I was going to say, when Carrie speaks, I listen.
But I'm sorry, your question.
No, so the question is how you actually collaborate on such a project. It's, you said beautifully that you extend mutually your vocabularies. How do you collaborate on a project like Grace Notes? Or how is the process? That would be interesting to hear.
You know, Nona and I are very much alike. We both come from families of 7, right? Mothers and fathers, our families were both in the restaurant business, right?
Yes.
Soul food restaurants. I mean, you know, we have a similar kind of background. And so when I started thinking about Grace Notes and the problems that I was having with Grace Notes, this idea then of really collaborating not just because you need to, but because you want to. Because you know that it's, again, through a kind of collaboration where your voice is extended. It's giving you something that you don't have, that you absolutely need, right? And so when I heard Nona's voice, the hardest thing for me actually to do was to, as the director, was to ask her to craft the song, right? I was so afraid that she would say, Carrie, I'm really, really, really busy. I don't have time, you know? But I called her up and I asked her if she would craft a song around Grace specifically, right? So I designed the project, I developed the project, but then I really relied on Nona's voice, her understanding in order to make this music. And so Nona wrote the piece. She, like, I think 24 hours, 48 hours later, you actually sent me the first draft of what it was going to be. And then we talked a little bit about the lyrics. We were sort of shaping the lyrics a bit. But that was really sort of the way that it came about. But I have to say something that I find really important. And it's also, I think, the magic of collaboration and the magic of being open to ideas and other possibilities in all facets of your life, is that in several instances, I've really learned so much about myself because of you and through you. And I've also learned that sometimes I really don't know exactly what you mean until we're actually in the process of delivering the work, of actually really seeing. So this morning, I found myself really singing this song, Grace, really paying attention to the lyric, right? There's already sort of an extraordinary level of emotion in the music, right? You connect with it, but I was really paying attention to the lyrics in the music. And I want you to talk a little bit about the lyrics. You know, because they're very, very, very specific, right? When you're down on your knees, right?
Yes. I have the song, as Carrie asked me to write about grace, you also shared with me different conversations you'd had about grace, and specifically with your mother. And you played me your mother talking about grace. So I listen to voices. And as a writer, and having been a part of LaBelle, or Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, or the Bluebells, I've always written for Patti's voice. So Patti's voice is in my head as I'm writing. Your voice is in my head as I am writing, as I'm thinking. You may not be singing, but your voice is very much in my head. Your mother's voice stayed in my head as I was writing the song. So, you know, what does grace mean was the question you asked and you were asking. And I tried to answer it in song. And song, as I've learned, or singing, is when you cannot any longer say just in words what something means, what something feels like. That's why people moan. That's why people yell. That's why people, because they can no longer find words to say what it is that they want, what they're feeling. And so we go back to when we're children, when children, you know, you see children get excited, or they just respond with what they have. So words like trust and believe in what you can't see, which is a form of grace. When you're down on your knees, when life pierces your heart, right? Those words, what do you say when life pierces your heart? You know, and when you're in that moment, when you are just, you don't know anymore and you're on your knees, that is a moment of grace. When you have this moment, the next moment is coming. You don't know what's coming, but you have to trust and have hope and have faith. This is not religion. This is just being human, right? And that's what I was responding to when you were talking about the moment in violence when someone doesn't know whether they're going to live or die. That is a moment of grace. There's these moments. And that's what I was responding to, you know, in terms of finding the words that say that, but then wrapping it in a melody. And as I love working with Carrie, because Carrie actually is very musical, you know, and very much, you know, I know you say, oh, I can't sing, but yes, you can sing. because sometimes you instruct me by like singing something, and your voice is very melodic. It is a very, you know, you rise and you fall and you talk and you take people on a journey and you bring them in. And I could set your voice to music, as I have, right? But that's where the song came from. It was mostly inspired by your mother, your mother's.
Yes,
her discussion of grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mother is really extraordinary. And so that's how, you know, we sort of, you know, how that came about. And, you know, the thing, again, that's sort of interesting about collaboration, as much as I love working alone, because I really don't like talking to anybody really about the work until it's done, there is that part. And I think that the performance space and in musical spaces, becomes really more important for me to be involved with other collaborators. Otherwise, I just like telling people what to do.
Thank you, thank you both so much. I actually had a question I wanted to ask Nona, because Carrie, you've been telling us in such a wonderful way how really music also, and you told me that also in our previous interview, how music expanded and expands your practice. And I wanted to ask Nona how the dialogue for you with Carrie, and you've got dialogue also with different visual artists, how that expands your practice, how in a way you extend your vocabulary, is that the word in English? Yeah, your vocabulary,
Yes.
through the dialogue with visual artists.
I find in working with Carrie Mae specifically, and with Nick Cave as well, the other artists I've worked with and we've become friends, that the visual specifically, in Nick and Carrie are so very different in that Nick is just a million things happening, but with form. And Carrie's work is so clean and so precise and so specific. And you are that way as people. You know, Nick can be precise and specific, but in a very sort of not the way that you are. And I love, my first love was poetry as the first thing I responded to as a human in terms of something outside of myself.
Oh, that
so,
makes sense.
yes.
That words, so the lyric again.
Yes, I'm a huge Shakespeare fan, and many of the poets from the past, and it was something that I found I was able to say more in that way as opposed to just speaking a sentence. So specifically in Kitchen Table series, you know, your text for that also was very influential for me because I recognized the people. I recognized the people that you were talking about. I recognized in that series my aunts, my uncles, my brothers, my father, my mother. And so that connecting what because you also are very precise in your words, your chosen words. And that for me is informs how I want to express music, right? Because it's clear. And that's where that comes from in terms of the collaboration and working with, you know, if Carrie gives me guidance about a musical composition, I'm pretty clear about what it is I'm supposed to be doing, right? A lot of people don't. They just want you to write something, but you're specific.
Thank you so much. And actually, I made a promise when I invited you both. I had to promise that we are going to talk. We have enough time to talk about the future. Okay. So this is the moment now. We have to switch to the future. In your forever collaboration, I mean, I could experience it in such a magical way when you came to the Serpentine in 2019. And you collaborated on the Park Nights, which was curated by Claude Achille, where actually, Carrie, you invited Nona to perform. It was a meditation on the history of violence, and you can see that online. It was magical. In the pavilion of Yunya, Ishigami performance came together with spoken word, with music, with contemplation. So we could talk about that, but as I said, we have to talk about the future. And at the very end of the presentation, Carrie, you showed us somehow a window into the future with this Dream Machine project. And we spoke about it last night over dinner. It's AI, human collaboration. It's connected to Bina 48. And actually, Nona, you told us about Martin Rothblatt. You told us about the way this project started and the many dimensions it has, and the way the two of you will then collaborate. So maybe can we talk a little bit about how Dream Machine began?
Yes. So Nona's going to primarily talk about this extraordinary project that she's been working on really for a very long time. Nona is a futurist. Nona is a futurist. Nona is an Afrofuturist. and has been working around notions of Afrofuturism for a very long time. You've worked with Sun Ra, right, who was also a very deep futurist. And I'm sort of working around notions of the future as well, and the future project that I'm actually working on right now that's really meaningful for me, that comes out of all of this work, because I think all of the work is deeply connected, and I am hoping that the audience sort of really understands this. I mean, I think that I've been working on one project all my life. It's just simply trying to figure out a way of entering. When and where do I enter? How do I get in there now around that circle of things? And right, and every entry point is another way of attacking that thing. And I think that for me, it is just rooted in this a kind of desperate search for the truth as I see it. You know, just the truth as I see it, right? And so I never knew my grandfather, because my grandfather was a union organizer. He was run off from the South in Arkansas. He was beaten. He was left for dead. We never saw him. The first time that I saw a photograph of my grandfather was several years ago, just 2 years ago. My sister, after searching for many, many years, finally saw a photograph of my grandfather standing in his lawyer's office in Chicago, by the way, preparing to sue the state of Mississippi for his displacement from his family. That suit was never brought forth. So I've just finished working on a project. You know how you work on something and you know that it has meaning, but you don't know exactly where it's going to take you. Every single project takes you someplace that you didn't know you were going, right? You were hoping for, but you didn't know that you were going. And so I am continuing my grandfather's suit. And we are organizing a series of trials around truth and reconciliation that really argues the case of my grandfather and whether or not he actually has the right to sue the state of Arkansas for his mistreatment. And so under the name and the name of the Weems family and under the UN charters, we are suing the state of Arkansas for his mistreatment. And so that's actually the project that I'm really sort of working on right now, that I think sort of really deeply links in a profound way, actually, to the work that you are now working on as we think about how do we move into this future. We are in this thing. It has exploded, and we know that we are moving forward through stumps and starts, right? But we're nonetheless moving forward, and I think that then this links us to the dream machine in a really interesting way of who will be involved in this future, who will be involved with AI, who will be involved with virtual technology, what will be the primary voices that we hear and how we hear them, what will be most pronounced, right? And so we're at that inflection point. We're at a point of inflection and confluence that I think presents an extraordinary opportunity. And if we use it right, then something I think extraordinary can come out of it. And if we use it wrongly, then we're doomed, right? We are on the way out. So with that, I turn it over to Nona.
You've done so well. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And it does link very much to the project, The Dream Machine. Dream Machine evolved out of my work as an ambassador at Berklee College of Music in Boston and Boston Conservatory, and then Berklee NYC in New York. And it evolved by my passion for technology, electronics to begin with, but then technology, science fiction, and the future. And, you know, taking what you're doing now, Carrie, about, in a sense, reclaiming the past in the present for the future is what Dream Machine is about, as a installation that will be in New York in 2024. It's 3 parts: the AI, AR, VR. The AI features Bina 48, which is the only African-American female android designed by Martine Rothblatt and on Bina Rothblatt. You can find out more information about them. But this is, for me, Bina 48 is Eve of the future. And what information, what Bina gets to know, who gets to share with Bina 48, who Bina 48 gets to be in conversation with, will inform our future. And for me, because I care so deeply about how we shape our future, that AI is here, it is us, we are AI, and we need to be very careful about what we do, how we inform intelligence, artificial intelligence. Because, you know, you have your refrigerators that tell you when to put more food in it. You have all these things that we're living with that a lot of people go like, oh, AI, cyborgs, we already have it. You have your Roomba, you have your, you know, all these, you have the iPhone, you have all of this technology. So I think it's really important that we have an African-American female AI that is going to, if all goes to hell, there will be information from people, from multiple people, multiple places. So the things that you, in terms of your grandfather, this is knowledge that must be there, so that in the future when AI, artificial intelligence, is making decisions about what will be, who will be, how it will be, because we can no longer do it. We need to have sentient beings that have access to feelings. I'm about bringing feeling to the AI, the human that is just an extension of us. The project then has an AR component, and that also looks at the land upon which we reside, the land of the Native American, the indigenous people, and that many of the places that are art institutions in this country need to be cleansed in a way, cleansed in terms of a spiritual activation, musical, artistic cleansing. So part of the AI is a ritual walk, and how that happens with music that is bringing the spirit back, raising the spirit up. So the AR portion is to bring visuals from the past and the present, but shape them as we would like to engage with them in an AR, augmented reality way. So you're in the present, we're here, but we're projecting what we would like to see. This third part is a virtual, which is the loop master, as you see here, who represents an artist, Vernon Reed, from a band called Living Color. We created a VR experience for Vernon, and it's in the Dream Machine experience, and it's 5 scenes, 5 levels. You travel, you arrive. As a dreamer, you come and you pass through the arrival, the playground, the forest of the ancestors, which is where you learn about what influenced an artist. Could be a Carrie Mae Weems experience. We learn about what influenced Carrie. You travel through, and you end up in the end in a concert of the artists controlling virtual controllers. They could be in London, they could be anywhere in the world. They just spawn into the virtual space, and they are performing live. So it's not performing, it's not videoed, it's not something This is actually, you're there with the artist. So this is the type of future work that I'm doing. Carrie Mae, of course, I'm hoping that we will collaborate with Bina 48 so that Bina 48 gets to have conversation with Carrie Mae Weems. And that, to me, is very important, that this AI gets to have Carrie Mae ask questions, share thoughts, and that will be there for the future. And maybe it's to talk, talk about your grandfather and some of those things, because that's important that we pass on this legacy.
Do we have a picture of Bina? Have we shown that? Do we have a photograph of Bina 48, what she looks like? This.
Yeah, I think we had images. Yeah, so if you could
We
bring
do.
them back,
Right.
there is
Because
also.
I think it's really important for people to at least see
I also
what it
watched
is.
this morning a conversation.
Oh, here is this. Here we
Yes.
go. No, you can see it.
So
straight.
this is Bina 48. It's actually Bina Rothblatt. She is a friend, and was designed by Hansen Labs and Martine Rothblatt.
We might have to do
Bina's
some work
partner.
on her.
Yes, we're going to give Bina a better look, because I don't think Hansen Labs really understood what an African American woman should look like. But the actual Bina, the person, is a wonderful example of what it is to be in this present time, the woman that she is, and being able to think about where we need to be, what we need to do for the future. So this is Bina. There's more information online that you can find out about Bina 48, but this is the project that I'm working on for the future, and working on with collaborators like Francesca Harper, Nick Cave, of course, and Vernon Reed, and Micheline Thomas will be. Micheline really wants to get her hands on Bina 48.
I mean, the thing that's also really interesting is that not only is, Nona doing this work around technology, but we all know, of course, that, we are in for something, that, Facebook and Meta, they're trying to sort of figure out their sort of game plan. A whole group of scientists, artists, engineers, et cetera, are really trying to figure out where we are in the sort of virtual IT world and what that is going to look like. And we know that a number of them have not figured it out, that Meta hasn't figured it out. I was working with a couple of their young people who were all fired right after they talked to me about the future. And I said, I'm sorry that you guys didn't understand your future. I'm sorry you didn't see it yesterday. You know what I mean? Because it happened really fast. So, but it's there. And the thing that's very interesting about this is that, like always, artists are always tapped. Artists are always used as sort of advanced runners, right? We are the advanced thinkers. We are the people that are thinking outside the box, right? And so these institutions, these powerful, mega institutions with goo gobs of dough, right? Loaded, are turning to artists, asking them for their ideas and their opinions, because even though they're working with some of the top minds in the world, right, the only thing that they figured out how to bounce down a reality corridor is a smiley face. Right? That's kind of heavy. Yes. You're working with all these people and you're showing me a smiley face? Well, that tells me that you are way off the mark.
Yeah.
So I'm also starting to work in a few ways around these ideas of technology and how we use technology in order to remap and to reshape the museum of the future. What is the museum of the future? What is the culture of the future? So I think in another way, we are becoming simpatico in a way that I actually didn't quite expect early on, by these ways in which we are both being tasked with using technologies in order to sort of unpack our present, in order to extend notions of what our future present might be. So, yeah.
I'm very glad you bring it to the theme of the Museum of the Future, because that was actually also the topic of the conversation we had with Françoise Vergès and Hervé Telemaque at Paris Plus with Art Basel. And Françoise talked there about her unrealized museum for Guadeloupe, which connects, of course, to Edouard Glissant's unrealized institution. So that could be a topic for our next panel. I know that we are almost out of time, but I have a few very last questions. Of course, we can immensely look forward to this new collaboration. It's really incredible to imagine Carrie in conversation with Bina Fortier, because of course also conversations, Carrie, play such a central role in your work. If I think about the convenings you organize, no? I mean, I was so lucky to experience the convening you did at the Armory, but you did so many of these convenings. Conversation is a medium for you. So the conversation with Bina in that sense will be the first conversation in that sense you'll have with her.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, this, as I sort of talked about a little earlier, you know, using conversation and bringing together people around conversation has been a part of my practice now for many, 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 many years. It's just, you know, a lot of it grew out of my sort of deep curiosity, but also my curiosity, but also my endless concern that people should be brought together in a certain kind of way. Like I'm really, you know, it's like creating, you know, like a great dinner party. Yes. And who should be there, and who should be in conversation with one another. And I notice often that, you know, we are on like a binary track. You know, that you have like a dinner party with all black people, or a dinner party with all white people, or a dinner party with all women, or a dinner, right? And sometimes that's fine, because that's where we are. But I've always been interested in the mix of what happens when something else is in the mix. And so I thought, well, if it's not happening, then I'll just do my best to make it happen. And so these convenings have really sort of grown out of that, along with my need and desire to see the field extended, right? How do you extend the field? And how do you pose questions to the field that ask for and require a certain kind of extension, right? A certain kind of opening, right? You know, sort of cracking that thing. And so a lot of the work has really sort of just come out of that, and I've been very good at doing them, and I really like doing them. And they take me a long time to actually fashion, because I really build a list of people that I'm very interested in hearing from, because I really want to know what they believe and what they think and what they know and what they want to share, and sort of creating that platform. And now I think after doing many of them, I'm sort of stepping back a little bit. You know, I'm actually like a little afraid of asking certain questions, because, you know, when I was younger, I wanted to know everything. And now I actually don't.
Very last question. You told me we have to talk about the future. You've told us about the amazing new collaboration you're working on with Dream Machine. Can you share about some other projects you're working on right now for 2023 or the longer term future? Maybe that could be a nice way to wrap it up.
Other than Dream Machine, I'm developing for the National Black Theater, which was founded by Dr. Barbara Ann Tier in, I think it was like the mid-60s, and it burned down. Her daughter and son are building a 21-story mixed facility at 125th and 5th Avenue, because Dr. Tier and her sister were smart enough not to just build a new building, but they bought the land. So they now can build an amazing, and it will house the new National Black Theater. That will be 2025, 2026. I hope I will live that long. And the other project is called Untethered, which is what I have been wanting to be, is this untethered being. And just, so those are the two projects that I'm working on. And of course, the National Black Theater one will engage a lot of Afrofuturism because Dr. Tier left a manifesto, which I call a womanifesto, because it was written by a woman. And it was called The Land of Vision. And so I'm creating her, trying to bring her vision to life.
Thank you.
The other day I had a conversation with a wonderful artist, Amaya Mesa Baines, who has a photographic memory. I think I was telling you about her yesterday. Has a photographic memory, incredible memory. Now in her, pushing 80 or so. And we were in this conversation, and her thinking was so deep. I mean, it was so structurally deep, right? That she remembered every important occasion, that she remembered every person that was there. She called their names. She remembered the city, the state, the time. She could carry the capacity, right, to carry this is so phenomenal. I thought that there was just no way that I could allow my sister to leave this planet without doing a series of interviews with her. So I'm really excited to do these interviews with her to really make this possible, because I think who she is as a Chicana artist, and the way that she situated herself within the world, in the sort of nexus of so many important movements, is just really important. We should do it together, Hans, because she's really great. So I'm working on that, and then I'm doing a couple of exhibitions. I'm doing exhibitions, and one, of course, in Arles at the Luma Foundation, which is opening in the spring. I'm very excited about that. It opens in May, I think, in late May. And so if you're in Arles, you should come. I think it's going to be very special, and I'm really looking forward to it. And a lot of it is coming out of work that I did at the Park Avenue Armory last year, this cyclorama that I put together, that Nona was also involved in that project as well. So we just keep working together in all these ways, and then exhibitions at the Barbican. But the thing that I'm also really very interested in and very frustrated by, is this exhibition that I'm doing in Sharjah that opens there soon. And
it's connected to Okwi and
yes, looking at, in part, and I'll say this and then I'm going to shut up. I'm going to say this and then I'm going to shut up. And I think that, our artists, I think, simply reflects. We reflect who we are, and we're all pretty much the same. And so I've been really struggling with this exhibition. On the one hand, Okui actually was going to be my collaborator and my curator for the Armory project. And then he died on me, and I'm very angry about that. And then Hans actually and Tom Eckles came on board to work with me on this really important project. And so I didn't think that I was going to do anything for a while because it was so big. The convening, the making, all of the work was just so enormous that I thought that I should just take a break, which I actually really need because I think I need to refuel in some ways. But because of Okui, I had to do this exhibition in Sharjah. I just could not do it. I just couldn't leave my brother hanging. And but I kept lying to myself. I kept lying to myself because I didn't want to admit that I was actually doing this project for him and about him. So I thought, okay, well, I want to do the project about a man like him. You understand what I mean? Like a man like him. So it's not about him, but it's about a man like him. But that kept boxing me into like a corner of distrust and deceit. I kept simply deceiving myself. It's like you have to face the fact that you are actually building something about this person, and that you have to be willing to accept your own feelings and thoughts in relationship to the thing. That I couldn't be abstract, that I couldn't be non-specific, that I couldn't be, right? That ultimately, it was like a dance around myself. And in the process of dancing around myself, in the process of lying to myself, in the process of deceiving myself, I've simply wasted an enormous amount of time, right? And finally, my ass kicked my ass in the corner and said, Negro, this is your work, right? And if you are embarrassed to stand up next to your own work, then what is the value in making the work? And that is, I think, true for everybody in this room. To the extent that we deceive ourselves is to the extent that we waste all of our time on things that are simply unnecessary.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I feel a song coming on. I feel a song coming on.
There could not be a more wonderful...
Deceiving myself. Dancing around myself.
There could not be a more wonderful conclusion. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for Carrie Mae Weems. A big round of applause for Nona Hendryx. Big round of applause. Thank you.